What's up guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Realistic Summer Career Mode. This is episode number 27. We're starting today's episode off on the back of our loss to Spurs and my interesting predictions for the upcoming Premier League season. Obviously I just want to say, as I mentioned at the end of the last episode, take my predictions with a grain of salt. I mean, I really do get most of them wrong. I'm the guy that said Spain were going to win the 2014 World Cup. Like, I get a lot of predictions wrong. I get most of my predictions wrong, but still, it was fun to go over them with you guys. And, yeah, in today's episode, I don't know, maybe I'll be able to do a couple more as well. I don't know, a bit of a rogue start to today's episode. What I'm really liking about this series is it kind of feels like a bit of a Docs classic, and I mean real classic, where, when I first began YouTube, I began over 10 years ago now, which is crazy to think about, it really is. When I first began YouTube, back then, obviously I'm fully aware that not many of you would have been subscribing back then, but some of you were, which I just find absolutely mind-blowing. For those that have been, you will know that back then, I used to do videos kind of like this really, more of a sit down and talk whilst the gameplay plays in the background, and sometimes I'll talk about what's going on, other times I'll just have a chat. It's quite nice to do that in this series. A summertime series, we're making it realistic. It really does feel like a Docs classic and a real throwback back to the days of like 2012, it's unbelievable when you think about it. But even so, we do start today's episode off with Manchester City away from home, and oh my goodness, Pep Guardiola's reaction there says it all. We went 2 goals up in the early stages, and Buemo with our first, and Mateta with our second, and we lead by 2 at the Etihad. But you know what? I wasn't one bit surprised. And why is that? Well, Manchester City right now, at this current point in this save, are struggling mightily. They're only just above the drop zone, and Pep Guardiola's animated instructions on the touchline are not doing much to avoid the fact that they are, at the moment, the most out-of-form team in the division. So we were leading by 2. They had a strong end to the first half. We weathered it and we still led by 2. Could have gone 3 goals up in the second half. And whilst with 10 minutes to go, they would bag themselves a late goal to put us under a bit of pressure. Couto smacking it past Dean Henderson and halving the deficit, reducing it to 1. Thankfully, we held on. Final score at the Etihad, Manchester City 1. Crystal Palace 2. And in our first meeting, after beating them last year in the FA Cup final, it's back-to-back wins over Guardiola's side. In fact, it's actually 3 straight, because we beat them last season at Selhurst Park as well in the build-up to the FA Cup final. We've faced Man City 4 times. We've beaten them 3 times. Goodness gracious me. So right now, Arsenal lead the way, top of the table, Liverpool in second. We're in third with 27 points, so 8 wins in 14. And right now, in a Champions League spot, Manchester City, on the other hand, only 4 points off the bottom 3, with Reading, the Royals, in 18th place. Wow, Manchester City are struggling big time. And the funny thing is, they're not even in Europe this season. Last season, as you know, they finished in 7th, but because we won the FA Cup, they are not in a European competition whatsoever. I've checked, I've seen. They're obviously not in the Champions League, they're not in our Europa League, and they're also not in the Europa Conference League. I've checked, they're not in Europe this season, so it's not like they've got European hangovers to cope with. No, Manchester City are all over the place right now. They certainly need a certain Scandinavian up top, I think. Even so, second game on today's episode, Manchester United. And whilst I'm going through this game here, I actually want to say I'm recording this commentary on the 3rd of August right now. So it's Wednesday for me. And I just saw this morning, every time my morning routines are quite simple, to be honest. And I always start off when I'm having my breakfast looking at BBC News. It's my main site for getting my news. And obviously I'm on BBC Sport quite a lot as well. I saw that Erik ten Hag was critical of the players that left on the weekend early before full time with Manchester United's friendly against Rayo Vallecano. Now, Diogo Dalot was one of those, and the other was, of course, a man you might know about. His name is Cristiano Ronaldo. Now, there's a lot of talk when he left before full time. Was he given permission by the club to do this, to go and work on his recovery on his own? Did he just decide to walk out without telling anyone? There were a lot of debates as to what had happened and whether he was given permission or not. Well, it turns out he wasn't. Erik ten Hag said he was disappointed that those players walked out before full time, and they're a team and they stayed together as such. It's a very interesting saga right now, isn't it, with Cristiano Ronaldo? Because I talked about it before, with Ronaldo, he's one of the greatest footballers of all time, and that is not an overstatement. Everyone accepts that, especially in the modern era. But at the moment, it seems like no clubs really want him, or I should say no major clubs that he would want to go to want him. Now, there are still, several weeks to go before the transfer window slams shut. There's still absolutely no reason why. The man on screen right now might end up going to Stamford Bridge, or might end up going to PSG, might end up going to Bayern Munich. But obviously time is not on his side now with the new season about to begin. And, you have to ask the question really, what is this going to mean for Cristiano Ronaldo's legacy as a Manchester United legend, if you will? Because that's what he would have been remembered as prior to this saga here. Now, obviously, many people might forget this, but when Ronaldo first moved to Real Madrid, he was absolutely desperate to leave. I mean, he really was going to throw every single toy out of the pram to make sure it happened. It did, and it turned out to be an amazing signing for Real Madrid. Of course, they certainly got return on investment, and to be fair for the Red Devils, for the fee they got, the replacements they made, and also the fact they were still able to win major honours in England and still reach the Champions League final. I think it was a year after he left, I think it was. It goes to show it was mutually beneficial for all, both Real Madrid, the buying party, Manchester United, the selling party, and also Ronaldo getting his wish of going to the Bernabeu as well. I think a lot was forgotten about his behaviour when he forced the move through, but I think the Red Devils fans certainly forgave him for the fact he had so much success at the Bernabeu, still held Manchester United in the highest of regard, and of course then came back to Old Trafford for last season, was their top scorer, was their best player, no denying that, and despite the fact he's in his mid to late 30s, still one of the best players in the world. Having said that, after a struggling season as a team last year, then wanting to jump ship, but not saying he wanted to leave right as the season ended because they failed to qualify for the Champions League and he's so desperate to preserve his goal-scoring record in the Champions League, but weeks afterwards, giving Manchester United less time to prepare for a future without Cristiano Ronaldo, and also less time for them to recuperate a good deal for him as well. You have to say, with the way he's been, not necessarily acting per se, I'm sure he's also acting on the best interests of Mendes, his agent as well, but the way he's been trying to force the move through once again, from what I've read, both on Reddit, both on Twitter, on message boards, and speaking to Manchester United fans as well, it does seem as though the relationship is kind of souring a little bit. And it wasn't that bad when he moved on first time, but this time it seems a little bit different and a little bit more toxic. It's the second time this has happened, and this time it seems like it's more of a negative light being shone on Cristiano Ronaldo, especially for the actions like we saw on the weekend. I assumed, when I read about it, Erik ten Hag had allowed him to go home and work on his recovery on his own. I didn't realise that he just decided to leave early, which is... it's pretty damning when you think about it, isn't it? Now, I want to say, I'm a massive Ronaldo fan, obviously. I've grown up with Ronaldo and Messi becoming the players they are and seeing the world-class talent unfold and develop in front of my very eyes to becoming great rivals in the El Clasico years. I couldn't have, been more blessed to watch these two as rivals individually with great rivals teams, Barcelona and Real Madrid. It's been amazing. I always say, when people say Ronaldo or Messi, who was the best at their prime, I would always say, I can't split them. I genuinely can't, because it would be doing the other a disservice to say, oh, it's definitely Ronaldo or it's definitely Messi. It would be doing either of them a disservice, because they're both world-class and, in my opinion, the greatest footballers of all time. In my opinion, they're the best two footballers of all time. So I love Cristiano Ronaldo as much as I love Lionel Messi, But I have to say, it's quite disappointing to see right towards the end of his career that this is happening, because his legacy at Manchester United, had he not returned, He would have gone down as a legend, helping them win the 2008 Champions League final. Of course, scored in that game in Moscow. Of course, obviously, winning Premier Leagues, for example. And just developing into one of the best of all time under club legend Sir Alex Ferguson. It's a bit of a shame to see, like, at the moment, the relationship between the fans and the player is soured to the point where it seems at the moment now Ronaldo doesn't appear to really care that much, which is kind of sad when you think about it, really, because it's not what I really was expecting that much. I know that, of course, he's worried about his Champions League goal scoring record. I know that he still believes he's the best player of all time, and why wouldn't he? I see that. I see his desperation to play at the very top, and he would see the Europa League as a second-rate competition. I understand that. But, mate, you made a commitment. You made the call to return to Old Trafford. He could have gone anywhere last season. He could have gone to Manchester City. And I find it just a bit sad that he seemed to care about his legacy at Old Trafford last season to make sure he didn't go to his rivals, didn't go and play under Pep Guardiola, didn't go and play for Manchester City. And now it doesn't seem like he's that fussed about it, because now Manchester United aren't in the Champions League. So last season was all about returning to his boyhood, not his boyhood club, sorry, that's Sporting Lisbon, but returning to his, the club that developed him, if you will, to a world-class talent. And not going to a rival team, even though Manchester City are the better team than Manchester United right now. It seemed last season it was all about, I've got to return for the fans. I've got to come back to Old Trafford. I've got to show that they'll always have a special place in my heart. And now it's like, they're not in the Champions League anymore, so I don't care about them anymore. Do you know what I mean? It seems very selfish, from being totally honest here, which is such a shame because, like I said, I love Cristiano Ronaldo, and as a man, I can't fault him. He's a real perfectionist. He has worked on his game, and most importantly, his body for all these years to prolong his longevity at the very, very top. I do understand his predicament of wanting to stay and play in the Champions League. I do understand his desire to make sure he holds off Lionel Messi and becomes the top scorer of all time in the Champions League. I do understand his desire to win the Champions League again before he ends up retiring. Having said that, he made a commitment to come back to Old Trafford, and he clearly wasn't as honest as he should have been about his return and the conditions of his return. I think Manchester United fans would be a lot more lenient towards his behaviour had he said, or his desire to leave, I should say, had he said, we need to stay in the Champions League. And there should have been a clause to say, if I don't stay in the Champions League, you've got to make sure I go. I think it's a bit disappointing that he's kind of just decided, with what we've seen, him actively shopping himself out, missing out on the tour of Thailand and Australia. I can't speak to the levels of, his reasoning for that. It was because of personal reasons, I read. And of course, lest we forget, Ronaldo has gone through a very, very tragic event in his personal life just a few months prior. Lest we forget that. Let's not forget about that. He's gone through a very tragic, catastrophic loss just a few months prior to this. We should all remember that, and therefore he wouldn't be in the best frame of mind completely, because of what he's gone through. We can't forget about that. He has gone through a tremendous tragedy, and of course we sympathise with him, and of course our thoughts are with him during that time. Manchester United fans and rival fans, showed great support for Ronaldo for what he'd gone through. It was absolutely awful, and you wouldn't wish that on anyone. So lest we forget that. But if we're talking about what's going on the pitch right now and what Ronaldo's wishes are, I just thought he'd be able to handle himself in a slightly better light than this. I understand his desire to leave, but I've always been of this opinion that once you made that commitment, you've got to see it through. If you want to leave, that's totally fine. If a club can't find a buyer for you, which is the case with Manchester United right now, you got to say, do your all for the team whilst you're there. These are the fans that have loved you, have sang your name for years and years and years. These are the fans that absolutely worship you. These are the fans that you return for. You got to make sure you honour what you committed to. Cristiano Ronaldo at the moment hasn't done that, but I'm hoping what will happen is that a conclusion to this saga ends before it gets too toxic and too sour. It's a bit of a shame what we're seeing right now for one of the best players of all time, seeing his legacy at Old Trafford be slightly tarnished by what we've seen in the media off the pitch. I hope that there'll be a good resolve. He'll either knuckle down, stay on Erik ten Hag and lead Manchester United back into the top four, or they find a suitable buyer, and it's done in a way where everyone can still be grateful for his service at Old Trafford. He can get what he wants, and Manchester United can recuperate a fee for him. Otherwise, the longer this goes on, the more toxic it gets. It's really, really sad, to be honest. But that will end today's episode of the Realistic Summer Career Mode, guys. Big thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Like, much love to you all. Have a fantastic day, and I'll see you for the next episode of the Realistic Summer Career Mode very soon.